Aquilo. Season 8. Chapter 4. Bones of the Past. It's a privilege of my upbringing that I speak 3 languages. Born on the south shore of Montreal, I'm obviously fluent in French. For a time, my father thought he might have to move to Florida for work. In preparation for that eventuality, both my brother and I were sent to a school with a strong English program, and we were encouraged to watch programming in both languages. When you're young, the brain is like a sponge. New languages are absorbed like syrup into a cake. While it had the side effect of making us speak in a jumbled mess of French and English for most of our teens, by the time Eric was done with high school, we were both perfectly bilingual, switching between tongues with ease. You know what else I was doing during those formative years? With Mom working as a grocery store manager and Dad still carving out his career as a fluid dynamic analyst, whatever that means, I was allowed plenty of time in the kitchen to make messes. At first, this annoyed Mom, who had to clean up after me, but we struck a deal. I could do whatever I wanted as long as Eric was in the house and I cleaned up after myself. Give a 9-year-old unlimited access to make her own cakes and cookies and see what happens. I felt like Prometheus with fire. Within a few years, I was as fluent with cooking as with any language. What I couldn't communicate with words, I could easily express through chicken pot pie or 3-tiered chocolate mousse. To this day, when I have something important to say, I say it with a meal. Which is easy when I have access to a professional kitchen in the cafe and a fully stocked personal kitchen in my apartment. It's like having all the dictionaries and thesauruses in the world. Nothing is out of reach. Pacing the interrogation room of South Aquilo's modest police station, however, is like having most of my vocabulary stripped from me. This is a place designed for mental sterility. The light, when on, is harsh and unforgiving. There are no windows or clocks blurring the passage of time. I'm an expert at keeping track of how long one dish needs to stay in the oven or when bread is proofed, but even I've lost track of the hours. The table and chairs are almost too heavy to move, and there are no pictures or paintings hanging from the walls. The only thing breaking up the dull, raw concrete surfaces are a massive one-way mirror and a door that locks from the outside. It's less of a room and more of a pressure cooker, but there ends the similarities to a kitchen. Like a list of ingredients, I go over the things I want to say in my head, occasionally glancing at myself in the mirror. I look like hell, but I'm okay with that. My cute little white blouse is stained with soil, and patches of dirt on my skirt remind me of when I kneeled in the cemetery. I look at my hands to confirm there's earth packed under my nails. For once, I look like people expect witches to. As I start to catalog the numerous vile things I would do for a shower, Detective Wilson opens the door. He's not here to let me out. Rather, he's bringing in a guest. A rather reluctant one at that. And I thought I looked bad. Ophelia hasn't shared much of her past with me. Not that I've gone through great lengths to learn. Regardless, I'd bet the deed to the Aquilo Cafe that this night has been the worst of her life. Already, it took formidable fortitude to go ahead and dig up her own mother in order to reunite her skull with the rest of her body. Sure, as a witch, she recognizes the importance of allowing the dead their rest. And I'm sure I would have done the same for either of my parents, but still, this was supposed to be a night of healing. Diane Cerejo would be made whole, her torment brought to an end at long last. And even I had brought an offering to demand forgiveness in the name of whatever ancestor of mine participated in her demise. What Ophelia witnessed, though, no one should have to see with their own eyes. "You girls will be okay?" Wilson asks, placing 2 steaming paper cups on the table. each bearing the logo of the Aquilo Cafe and offering the smell of cinnamon. "We'll be fine," I answer, keeping my voice soft and neutral. He nods before closing the door behind him, leaving me and my once nemesis alone. It hits me that I've just locked myself in a room with a witch who loathes me and my family. In her hands, she's holding her large bag filled with sharp knitting needles and skeins of yarn. All the tools for her magic. I bet her mean orange cat is in there too, waiting to poke his head out to judge whatever I have to say. The way she looks at me, I could swear her frown is growing more severe with every passing second. It looks like either her face will collapse into a black hole or she'll explode into a new transcendent form of pure hate. I step next to the table and take one of the paper cups. Then, trying to keep my back straight and show compassion without weakness, I offer it to her. My preferred language is food. "I'm sorry for what happened." She slaps the cup from my hand, sending it flying across the room to crash into the mirror. The chai latte, specifically picked because it's her usual drink, creates a beautiful liquid arc as it flies through the air before splashing to the floor. "I have no time for limp apologies, Miriam," she snarls, spittle flying from between her teeth. "Tell your detective friend to let me go." "Not before we talk," I say, pulling up a chair and sitting down. How weird is it to be looking up to Ophelia? Not like someone I admire, but in the physical sense. While I'm in the chair, she towers over me. Considering her mood, it's like I'm rolling over and putting myself at her mercy. I push the second cup across the table, a subtle invitation for her to also sit down and talk. "You have to believe me," I insist. "I had nothing to do with what happened." She attempts to make a dramatic pull of the chair before sitting down, but the weight of the metal takes her by surprise and she damn near pulls her arm out of its socket instead. It's funny from an outside perspective, but it does nothing to lighten her mood. "This is your plan? Have your cop friend lock us together until we make up?" "Yes," I snap. "It is. I never know how to talk to you. You're always pissed at me for something. Normally, I'd let you tire yourself out, but I don't think we have that luxury this time. So you have to believe me when I say that I didn't do whatever it is you think I did. Because someone messed up our rituals, and the two witches even remotely capable of doing something like this are right here in this room." Her features don't soften. Rather, they change the focus of their harshness. Her scowl falters, and the anger leaves a little room for sadness instead. Her fingers spider crawl to the paper cup, pulling it slowly towards herself. She smells the generous cinnamon still wafting from the beverage. "I know," she whispers. "Know what?" "I know you didn't have anything to do with it. Not directly. I'm not even sure you'd be capable of it, if I have to be honest." She sips from her latte, not bothering to look up. "Then why in the mother's name have you been taking it out on me?" "Because," she hesitates with another sip. "Because I freaked out, Miriam. I just saw my dead mother's corpse levitate out of her grave and explode into nothing. Do you know what catharsis is? This was supposed to be mine. That hinge moment where I can put all the trauma of losing her behind me. That's why I wanted you to participate. A D4 killed my mom, and if I'm to move on, I need every part of that chapter closed. But here I am, set back to zero. Again, someone is hijacking my mother's corpse, and I've no idea why, or reason to believe it's anyone but a D4 again. I lashed out." Another sip, but this time she allows the liquid to stay in her mouth a moment before swallowing. "Is there vanilla in this?" "You needed it," I confirm, allowing a little smile to shape my lips. "And the touch of Irish cream?" "Annabelle's initiative." I try to smell the air, hoping to catch a whiff of the drink. "Not bad," Ophelia says, drinking more deeply. "Especially for someone who's mostly self-taught." Ophelia nods, settling into the effects of the latte. We're no closer to figuring out what happened, not in any practical way, but at least we're on the same side. Are we talking shop? But I don't think she's the one responsible for tonight, I say, leaning back into my chair, some of the tension in my back and neck finally letting go. At least Wilson won't find me with knitting needles sticking out of my eyeballs. I wasn't suggesting. Of course not. I put my hands up, a silent admission that I might have misspoken. But you really think a Dufour witch might have? I hate to state the obvious, but there's only one Dufour left in Aquilo, and I thought we already agreed that I wasn't responsible. She finishes her drink in one final gulp. As she puts the cup down, I can see a fresh determination in her eyes. They're still puffy and wet, sodden with a sadness that I expect won't go away for a while, but there's something new glowing behind those irises. "Did you get a good look at my mother's bones?" she says. She does a good job of keeping herself together despite the image she conjures. I nod. While the skull of Ophelia's mom was pristine, a museum-quality specimen without so much as a blemish, what other bones were uncovered were etched with runes and symbols. Symbols with a familiar shape and calligraphy. I did. I stand, the metallic chair making a hellish racket as it slides on the concrete floor. And there's something I need to show you. I'll have to go down and open the cafe in less than an hour. As is too often the case, I'll be doing so after a sleepless night. Sometimes it's because the weirdness of Aquilo flared up. Mostly, I just spend the night reading or trying some culinary experiment in the kitchen upstairs. This time, I'm weary down to the bone and bruised of skin and spirit. I'm sitting at a kitchen table in my apartment, and I can't tell if the bath, my bed, or the couch is calling the loudest to me. Instead, I'm entertaining half a dozen people waiting for me to make my stunning revelation. I'd have much rather it be limited to Ophelia and me, but it would be strange to send everyone home after what we've just gone through together. I can't imagine having Eric dig a grave, get picked up by the cops, only to brush him away. The same goes for Petunia and Annabelle. They deserve to know what came of this ordeal. Then there are the less welcome guests. Ophelia has her mean orange cat, and Brioche was already sitting on the kitchen counter, drinking from the faucet when we arrived. The lot of us are spread between the kitchen and connected dining room. The night outside remains dark, but the stars are gone, and there's a tinge of indigo to the sky. I've served everyone some coffee or water, but I've no food to share right now, which feels as wrong as a block of ice in an oven. On my lap, I've got Doris's bread box. Thankfully, I don't have to warn the squeamish before opening the wooden container and revealing its contents. "What is that?" Eric asks, leaning in to get a better look, only to pull back when satisfied. Annabelle isn't surprised, but no less intrigued. The thirst for answers is obvious in her eyes and smile. Sure, it's a morbid revelation I've unveiled for them, but the thrill of mystery has its own inebriating effect. Petunia, who's holding Brioche to keep her from fighting the cat, isn't even looking at the bread box, her focus on me instead. She's either trying to read my state of mind or determine what level of crazy keeps this in a bread box. Then there's Ophelia. She sits cross-legged on the chair furthest from me, at that corner between dining room and corridor. Without the hallway light, she is bathed in shadow. There's an empty spot amongst the frames that hang above her head. William the cat is tucked in her lap, looking up at her. She isn't curious, surprised, or grossed out. The moment I swung the hinges of the bread box to show its contents off, she knew what she was looking at. "Doris's skull," she announces, drawing a gasp from Eric and Petunia. "It is," I confirm, twisting my great-grandaunt's skull to face her. There's a symbol carved into the bones of Doris's head, like two crescent moons back to back. It looks less like it was etched so much as burnt in. It's of the same alphabet as the pattern similarly etched onto the bones of Ophelia's mother. Her expression remains the same, but stiffens. The tension in her muscles and features grows hard at the sight of the etching, or rather, what it implies.
You dug up Doris?
Eric asks, curious and appalled.
Of course not,
Petunia corrects him, her certainty short-lived.
right?
I take the skull out and put the bread box next to my chair on the floor. In my career working with food and meat, I've touched far more gruesome and morbid things than a chunk of bone. I've cracked the ribs of pigs and cooked beef hearts. I've even prepared andouille from scratch. Holding the delicate remains of my great-grandaunt, however, is something different. I can appreciate the sacrifice of an animal to feed us, and I try to honor it by making the most of what is given. But Doris didn't die with a purpose. Sure, she was old, but natural causes didn't take her. It was always my assumption that her demise was met as collateral damage of the Hellgate and the many demons that spewed forth from it. I'm not so sure anymore.
I did not,
I confirm, twisting the skull between my fingers.
That fox from the cemetery, it gave it to me last summer. It wanted me to see this symbol. It wanted me to find out what happened to Doris.
Annabelle gets up from her chair, leaving her cup of coffee to kneel next to me. She runs a nail painted bright pink above the carving on the skull's forehead, her lips parted with curiosity.
No such thing as a coincidence,
she murmurs, stating what I assume we're all thinking.
Wait, were you keeping this thing in your bread box the whole time?
All eyes turn towards me, and I know what they're all thinking. A skull in the kitchen? Gross. I turn the skull to face me, and I look deep into the sockets where I know friendly brown eyes used to be. Across the room, I glance up to see rows of frames, each a window to a past when skin still covered bone. I blink away a tear, thinking that at least death didn't take her smile away. This was her home, I explain, my voice as low as a prayer. This was her kitchen, her sanctum. If Doris deserves somewhere to rest, even for a little while, it should be here. The bread box, well, that's for hygiene purposes. Everyone nods their understanding, and Annabelle puts a comforting hand on my knee, plopping down to sit on the floor rather than go back to her seat. Everyone, except Ophelia. She doesn't give any obvious reaction, no nods or shaking of her head, but somewhere during my explanation, her features softened. Something like a shy smile crept onto her thin lips. Even William, the usually cantankerous cat, looks like he's mellowed down. After months, years even, it looks like the little knitting witch has finally allowed herself to thaw. Not the warmth of convenience she struggled to display over the summer, but a genuine naked empathy. For the first time, I think Ophelia and I understand one another. So, she says after a moment of sacred silence, we find the fox then. Or rather, you find it. I doubt I'm on speaking terms with the animal after tonight. It certainly seemed to have a vested interest in what we were doing, Eric adds. He's not wrong. The fox is already somewhat of a mystery to me, and what little I do know doesn't begin to explain why it interfered with our rituals. With enough care to handle a sugar sculpture, I place Doris's skull back into the bread box. Brioche crawls out from Petunia's lap and saunters over to my feet. With that mix of clumsiness and agility that only raccoons can muster, she reaches up to grab the lid to the bread box and close it. I agree. I stand to bring the bread box back to the kitchen, placing it onto the counter like a priest would a reliquary. Except it's not like I have the means to summon it at will. The damn thing just showed up one day, demanding a scarf. Again, the focus shifts, this time to Ophelia. We all saw the power she leveraged against the fox, humbling the creature with a vulgar display of power the likes of which I'd never seen in a human being before. I doubt there's a level of prowess that would allow me to manipulate random scones and banana breads with a wave of my spoon. And I doubt Ophelia is unfamiliar with the specific scarf the fox wears. Are you sure you want to do this now, Miriam? Her voice carries no threat, no anger, none of her usual vitriol. There's a weight to her words, however, that hints at secrets we both need to share and apologies still in need of speaking. William walks out from her lap, making a show of stretching to his full length in the process. The orange cat starts to go around the room, sniffing at everyone's feet, taking the measure of all present. Petunia gives him a wary look, unsure what to do with the animal, while Annabelle lets him smell her fingers before scratching him behind the ears. William and Brioche lock eyes. They've met before, briefly, and the general mood has always been hostility. In fact, the entire raccoon family of Aquillow seem to have no love for William. Or for the fox, now that I think about it. It's tempting to immediately separate the two animals before they start to scratch and bite. Brioche isn't much of a fighter, and she's not that much bigger than William, but both have fierce fangs and sharp claws. It wouldn't take much for my dining room to turn into a bloodbath. However, a quick look at Ophelia, leaning back in her chair as she observes the scene, shows me how unperturbed she is. Her demeanor is mirrored by her cat. In turn, Brioche also displays a surprising amount of placidity. She's still careful, circling the cat with care, but I hear no hiss or growl. Neither friends nor enemies, the two are enjoying a truce sufficient that they can properly size one another. Is this how this whole familiar business works? I look through the kitchen and out the window. I'm already late for work. I can tell from the purple of the sky and the salmon flesh-colored clouds. With a sigh, I think of the customers that are probably already waiting in line at the door and the long hours ahead. "All right, guys," I announce, pushing myself up to my feet. "I need to get to work and think about this more." I help Annabelle up and start picking up glasses and mugs. "You should get some rest before your shift," I tell my friend. "And you," I point at Ophelia, still sitting on the floor watching her cat's behavior, "you should go to the hospital and get checked out." Why is it that every time something terrible happens in Aquillow, the first victim is my sleep schedule? The answer is obvious. Like a corpse pushed by a will too distracted to do otherwise, I shamble down the apartment stairs outside. My friends, each in their own state of exhaustion, wave at me and each other before wandering off. The zombie-like procession is witnessed by the few customers in front of the cafe. Michael frowns in disappointment, probably thinking his coffee will be late because I stayed up to party with friends. I give half-hearted apologies while going through the motions of getting the Aquillow open and ready for customers. Annabelle left a bit of a mess in the kitchen and on the counter, having slapped together the 2 chai lattes in a hurry. It's fine. Was it like this for Doris, too? I stepped into her shoes, then put my own finger into the hole in the dam, taking her place. When the rain falls and the water levels rise, I'm the one to feel the pressure and stand my ground. My nights are taken over, and I have to power through without sleep. Makes me wonder how Doris survived to be over a century old. "Don't you dare be difficult today," I poke my finger at the coffee machine. "You do not want to be an obstacle to my caffeine, mister." The interaction makes my impatient customers smile. They've all seen this happen before. My arguments with the coffee machine are no secret, though they must seem oddly one-sided from their point of view. Fortune is on my side, and I'm well prepared for this day. I knew the night would be short, so all my food is ready to go, and all I need to do is rotate a few cookie sheets and pots through the oven for an hour, and I'll be up to speed. The good news is, the weekend crew tends to come in later in the day, leaving me enough time to get my second wind and push through the haze of exhaustion. Like clouds parting, both my mood and levels of alertness increase with each passing hour. It'll be a while before any of my friends are able to come back, and I expect when Ophelia returns from getting checked out, she'll prefer my couch to my conversation. I'm fine with this. A little time to myself won't hurt, and don't I have something important this afternoon? During a lull in the breakfast cloud, I take a moment to watch them, the customers. I complain about my lack of sleep, savoring aggrandizing thoughts over my role in town, but if I have a finger plugging a hole in the dam, I am not the only one. Mayor Byrne and Lagacé have been stopping the flood in their own way for a while. Wilson, after a fashion, does his part. My friend from the park, Patience, also contributes a little. Henry Figg cleaned out the vampires, and who knows what Farmer Pickering does, but I bet it's more than he lets on. And that's the thing about Aquilo. The real mystery is never the monsters or the demons, but the people. Helen Edna, notary public, once made the point that we're all touched by the strange and unusual here, but how much we all want to discuss it is a very private matter.
You look tired, dear.
A used-up but friendly voice interrupts my musings. I look up to see the diminutive figure of Phyllis Baker at the register. Short, curly white hair, a rose-colored knitted cardigan, and a walking cane all create the portrait of a stereotypical kindly old lady. Phyllis isn't my favorite client, through no fault of her own. But she's the kind to take a few minutes deciding what to order before getting the same thing she does every single day. Then she'll pay with cash, counting out the exact change from her purse. If she remembers to leave a tip, it'll be an amount appropriate for the early 50s, not the economically challenging year of 2023.
Bad night,
I explain, taking out the bag of decaf I have only for her.
Nothing to worry about. Anything to eat?
She'll say nothing at the moment, but then come back in 5 minutes to get something from the display. Bless her soul, but she's a high-maintenance one.
Careful not to run yourself ragged now,
she says, opening her worn leather purse, unleashing the smell of peppermint candy and hand cream into the air.
Do 4 women. You all act like you're immortal. You knew Doris?
The coffee machine acts up when I pour decaffeinated grounds into its entrails. I get the need for decaf, but I suppose the brass antiquity is more of a traditionalist than I am. Not many people drink it here, usually opting for tea instead. But Phyllis looks like she was chiseled off the same stone as the 10 Commandments, and her heart might be too fragile for stimulants.
Oh, yes.
She fiddles with her cane before using it to point at the spoons hanging on the wall.
I used to live here, you know. Had a little apartment above a business on this street. Lovely years they were. And you know, I was a fixture at this very establishment. It looked different back then, though. Didn't have this fancy counter, and the furniture was nicer, more lived in. Can't stop the passing of time, unfortunately. But yes, I knew Doris very well indeed.
The coffee machine chokes out an awful sound and hisses boiling steam into the air, reluctant still to do its job. Phyllis, with one practiced swing of her cane, gives the beast a light but stern hit. It's not enough to dent the brass piping, but the sound is so loud as to quiet the rest of the customers. Taken aback, I'm about to lay into the old woman when suddenly the old contraption begins to cooperate, dripping dark brown liquid into the waiting mug.
Machines,
Phyllis complains, clicking her tongue in contempt.
You have to show them who's boss. You know,
I start, putting her mug on a saucer with a napkin.
I've never met anyone who knew Doris when she was younger. You must know Olivia Figg.
At length, the old woman makes her way to the counter and struggles a moment to pull herself up on a stool. I'd normally prefer she leave me to my thoughts, but considering how much Doris has been on my mind the last couple of days, I don't mind listening to her talk about my great-grandaunt.
The one with the apples?
Phyllis asks.
No. Or maybe I suppose she was one of the little brats that crowded the street back in the day. How was she? Doris, I mean.
I pour myself a third, or is it a fourth, cup of coffee with plenty of sugar and a touch of milk for color, leaving things out for Phyllis to mix her own drink.
She was a good girl,
the old woman says, showing little sign of nostalgia.
Prone to seeking out adventure when she had no business doing. You know, she almost ran off to join the Great War, the second one. She read an article about donut dollies and got it in her head to join the Red Cross and do her part. I talked her out of that one. Oh, and when she was 9 or 10, she broke her leg playing in the construction site of the bank. Kept poor old Denise on her toes, I'll tell you that much.
I try to run the numbers in my head. The basic arithmetics of ages and historical events get blurred between exhaustion and caffeine. Eventually, I give up.
Sounds like you two were close.
Phyllis looks up from her mug, as if trying to parse the question.
Oh, yes. As close as you can get. Without being family, I suppose.
Old Lady Baker offers me a toothless smile that's either pride or malice, and I cannot figure out which. She digs into her purse again, pulling out a pillbox calendar from which she pours a collection of colored capsules. She seems to have forgotten I'm even there, meticulously putting the pills in order of size before counting them. Her lips move as she mouths the numbers.
Oh!
Her head jolts up, almost surprised at my presence.
I'm sorry, dear. Could I bother you for a glass of water? Tepid. Some of these are tough to swallow.
I oblige, trying to get a good measure of Phyllis's features before I go to the kitchen. When I come back, she's still counting the pills, moving them 1/4 of an inch when each is counted.
Here you go, Miss Baker.
I put the glass next to her empty mug before taking that away.
Thank you, Doris,
she says without looking up. I sigh. No wonder I couldn't get the years straight when putting the chronology of Phyllis Baker's story together. Should have considered that her memories might be as cloudy as the milk in my coffee.
You're welcome,
I say, keeping my voice soft and friendly. Look at the wall clock tells me I still have 3 hours before I'm relieved of duty by Stefan, but also only 4 hours before my afternoon tea. I've been promoting the damn thing for a month, and I've got just about nothing ready. That's the other price to pay for sleepless nights. Days start to blur together without a clear line separating them. With a gun to my head, I would have sworn today was Saturday. It's a good thing I'm an organization freak. You have to be if you're going to be juggling a whole menu and a kitchen on your own. Lists and schedules are my friend, and I use them to prepare grocery orders and rotate dishes through my oven. Even the pots, pans, and cookie sheets have to be carefully kept track of so I don't run out of any as I'm going through a round of preparation. Surely I have all my ingredients, or can improvise around whatever's missing, so it's a question of putting it all together in the correct quantities for everyone who's reserved a spot. I'm still running through every sandwich, scone, both sweet and savory, and other bite-sized treats when the door chimes welcome a new customer. I look up, expecting to see one of my usuals. The Mayers, perhaps, though they don't normally visit during the weekend. Marie Belle has been known to go jogging in the morning and stop by for some juice once in a while. But it's not her. Instead, it's a familiar, bubbly, blonde young woman. About my age, she's wearing trendy hiking clothes that have probably never been in a forest, and the kind of smile you'd expect from a cheerleader. One hand is holding a bright pink plastic water bottle. The other has its fingers intertwined with her boyfriend's.
Hi, Mims.
This is the worst week ever. Aquilo is written by J.F. Dubow and narrated and produced by me, Amy Frost. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast platform. Want to support the show? Buy us a coffee. Go to ko-fi.com/Aquilo to donate. Aquilo has a Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Aquilo for details. Follow us on Facebook, Blue Sky, and Instagram under the username Aquilo.